Hey everyone! Today, let's dive into the story of the Daylamites, an intriguing and fierce group of people from ancient Iran. The Daylamites, also known as Daylamites, hailed from the rugged mountainous regions of northern Iran, particularly around what's now the southeastern part of Gilan province, near the Caspian Sea. These folks were known for their warrior spirit and exceptional skill in close combat. Back in the day, they were highly sought after as soldiers, serving various empires, including the mighty Sasanian Empire and later the Muslim empires that followed. Interestingly, while most of Persia fell under Muslim rule, the Daylamites managed to resist the initial conquest, though many who served as soldiers abroad eventually embraced Islam. By the 9th century, many Daylamites had adopted Zaydi Islam, and later on some shifted towards different branches of Islam, like Ismailism, and even the Nizari Ismailism. Now, around the 930s, the Daylamites made a big splash in history when the Abbasid dynasty, which was rooted in Daylamite origins, rose to power. They controlled much of what we now know as modern Iran until the Seljuk Turks showed up in the mid-11th century and changed the game. So, where did the Daylamites come from? They lived in the highlands of Daylam, nestled in the Alborz mountain range between Tabaristan and Gilan. Some sources even suggest they might have originated from eastern Anatolia near the Tigris. They spoke a language called Daylami, which, unfortunately, has since faded into history. Back in the Sasanian days, these Daylamites were known as top-tier infantry, renowned for their fighting prowess. Byzantine historians like Procopius and Agathias noted that these warriors were experts in close combat, often armed with swords, shields, spears, or javelins. The Daylamites first pop up in historical records around the 2nd century BC, but they really started making waves during the Sasanian era. Their history is filled with stories of battles, rebellions, and alliances, like their support for the rebellion of Bahram Choban against Khosrau II. Some even say that after the Sasanian defeat at the Battle of Al-Qadisiyah, a contingent of 4,000 Daylamite soldiers defected to the Arab side and converted to Islam. And for centuries, the Daylamites managed to hold their mountainous homeland against the Arab forces, all while under the leadership of their own local rulers. Warfare in this rugged region was a constant back and forth, with raids and counter-raids keeping both sides on edge. The old fortress city of Qazvin, which had been a stronghold during the Sasanian era, continued its role as a defensive barrier against Daylamite attacks during this time. According to the historian Al-Tabari, the Daylamites, along with Turkic peoples, were seen as some of the fiercest enemies of the Arab Muslims. Although the Abbasid Caliphate managed to push into the region and occupy parts of it, their grip was never truly solid. Interestingly, around 781, a Nestorian monk named Shubalishu tried to spread Christianity among the Daylamites. Despite his efforts, Islam soon became the more dominant influence. During the reign of Harun al-Rashid, a number of Shia Muslims fled to the Daylamites to escape persecution. Among these refugees were some Alids, who played a key role in gradually converting the Daylamites to Shia Islam. However, even as Islam took root, the Daylamites maintained a strong sense of Iranian identity and a deep-seated resistance to Arab rule. This was evident in the way local rulers like the Bayids and Ziarids made it a point to celebrate traditional Iranian and Zoroastrian festivals. As we move into the 9th century, Daylamite warriors started to become an essential part of armies across Iran. The Abbasid Caliphate, needing more mercenaries for their royal guard and army, began to recruit Daylamites, even though they weren't as numerous as other groups like the Turks or Khorasanis. By the early 10th century, Daylamites were serving in high-ranking positions, such as Ali ibn Wajudan, a Daylamite soldier who became the chief of police in Isfahan during the reign of Al-Muqtadir. The Daylamites were known for their unique battle tactics, often advancing with a shield wall while wielding two-pronged short spears and battle axes. Their painted shields were another distinctive feature, adding to their fearsome reputation on the battlefield. Over time, these fierce warriors found their way into the armies of the Seljuks and Ghaznavids, serving as elite infantry. And now explore their culture, religion, and way of life. The Daylamites were quite diverse in their religious practices. Most of them likely followed some form of ancient Iranian paganism, though there were also smaller groups who were Zoroastrian or even Nestorian Christian. Al-Biruni, the famous scholar, mentioned that the Daylamites and their neighbors, the Gilites, lived according to the traditions of the mythical Aphrodite. Christianity made some inroads among them, thanks to the efforts of John of Daylam, with Christian bishoprics recorded in the area as late as the 790s. It's even possible that some traces of these Christian communities survived until the 14th century. Now, let's talk about their names, another clue to their cultural roots. Daylamite chieftains from the 9th and 10th centuries bore names that were distinctly Iranian, but with a twist. Their names weren't the typical Persian names you'd expect from the southwestern regions of Iran. Instead, they had a northwest Iranian flavor, with names like Gorangej, meaning chaser of wild asses, and Sherzil, which translates to lion's heart. It's pretty clear that their identity was deeply tied to their northern Iranian roots. When it came to customs, the Daylamites were known for being incredibly tough and resilient. They were the kind of people who could endure harsh conditions without flinching. In battle, they were equipped with javelins, battle axes, and tall shields often painted in gray. Their battle tactics usually involved forming a shield wall to fend off attackers. Some even used javelins tipped with burning naphtha. Imagine the impact that would have had on the battlefield. However, they weren't big on cavalry, which was a significant disadvantage, so they often had to rely on Turkic mercenaries for mounted combat. The Daylamites had a unique way of mourning their dead, which might seem a bit extreme. They mourned not only over their fallen, but sometimes even over themselves when they faced failure. This intense form of mourning was carried into Baghdad by the Buyid ruler Mu'izz al-Dawla in 963, which possibly influenced the evolution of the Tajay, a form of Shia Islamic passion play. Descriptions of the Daylamites paint them as bold and daring, though sometimes inconsiderate. They were generally thin and had fluffy hair, and while they practiced agriculture and kept herds, they didn't have many horses. Instead, they grew rice, fished, and produced silk textiles. According to al-Muqaddasi, the Daylamites were handsome with well-kept beards. And interestingly, their women were no less formidable than the men. They worked alongside them in agriculture and were considered equals in strength, character, and even in managing affairs. The Daylamites were also strict about endogamy, meaning they preferred to marry within their own community.